Natalie Ross wiped flour from her hands and glanced at the clock above her commercial oven. 3 in the morning. The wedding cake order for the Martinez family sat half-finished on the counter, delicate sugar flowers waiting to be placed on each tier. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but rent was due in 5 days, and this cake would cover it with just enough left over for diapers and formula. The small bakery she rented in the downtown district was barely keeping her afloat. Sweet beginnings had been her dream since culinary school, but reality had turned that dream into a daily struggle. Between creating custom cakes and caring for her 5-month-old son, Owen, sleep had become a luxury she could no longer afford. Most nights, she worked while Owen slept in the portable crib she kept in the back office, his soft breathing the only sound besides the hum of refrigerators. Natalie had learned to survive on coffee and determination. She was 28 years, old and felt twice that age. Her long brown hair was always tied back in a messy bun, her apron stained with buttercream and chocolate, her hands constantly moving. There was no time for rest, no space for self-pity. Owen needed her, and that was enough reason to keep going. The phone rang just as she was piping the final rose onto the second tier. She almost ignored it, thinking it was a wrong number at this hour, but something made her pick up. "Is this Natalie Ross?" The voice was professional, urgent. "Yes, this is she. Who is calling?" "This is Dr. Morgan from Metropolitan Hospital. You're registered in our volunteer lactation donor program. We have an emergency situation and we need your help immediately." Natalie's heart jumped. She had signed up for the program 3 months ago when she realized she produced more milk than Owen needed. Helping other mothers felt meaningful, but they had never called her directly before. "What kind of emergency?" "We have a premature infant whose mother died during an emergency delivery tonight. The baby is refusing all formula, and her oxygen levels are dropping. We need a nursing mother who can come to the hospital right now." The words hit Natalie hard. A mother who died. A baby fighting for life. She looked at Owen sleeping peacefully in his crib, then at the unfinished cake that represented her survival. "I have my son with me. I can't leave him alone." "Bring him. We have a family room. Please, Miss Ross. This baby has less than an hour if we don't find help." 20 minutes later, Natalie pushed through the hospital doors with Owen bundled in her arms, her heart racing. A nurse met her immediately and guided her through sterile hallways to the neonatal intensive care unit. The lights were harsh, the air thick with tension and antiseptic smell. Dr. Morgan was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and tired lines around her mouth. "Thank you for coming. The father is here, but he's in shock. His wife died 2 hours ago, and now his daughter is struggling." "Where is the baby?" They led her to a small room where machines beeped steadily, monitoring every breath of the tiny infant lying in an incubator. Sophie, according to the name card, weighed barely 4 pounds. Her skin was almost translucent, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Tubes connected her to various monitors, and her small face was pinched with distress. "She won't take the feeding tube. Her body keeps rejecting it," Dr. Morgan explained quietly. "We need to try direct nursing. It's her best chance." Natalie didn't hesitate. She handed Owen to a nurse who promised to watch him, then washed her hands thoroughly, and followed the doctor's instructions. They carefully transferred Sophie from the incubator to Natalie's arms. The baby was so small, so fragile, that Natalie was afraid she might break her. But the moment Sophie felt skin-to-skin contact, something shifted. Her rapid breathing slowed slightly. Her tiny fingers curled against Natalie's chest. And when Natalie guided her to nurse, Sophie latched on with surprising strength. The room fell silent except for the monitors, which began showing steadier readings. Sophie's oxygen levels climbed slowly but surely. Her heart rate stabilized. The doctors and nurses exchanged looks of relief. Natalie sat there, tears streaming down her face, holding this stranger's child who was drinking life from her body. She thought about Sophie's mother, who would never hold her daughter like this, never see her first smile or hear her first laugh. The grief felt overwhelming. She's feeding. Dr. Morgan's voice was thick with emotion. You saved her life. An hour passed. Sophie fell asleep against Natalie's chest, her breathing deep and regular for the first time since her birth. Natalie was afraid to move, afraid to break the spell. That was when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned slightly and saw a man standing in the doorway. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-30s, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that looked out of place in the hospital setting. His dark hair was disheveled, his face pale and hollow. But his eyes, deep blue and filled with unspeakable pain, were fixed on the baby in Natalie's arms. "That's my daughter," he whispered, his voice breaking. Julian Hartley looked like a man whose entire world had collapsed in one night. He stepped closer, moving carefully as if afraid he might shatter what little remained. He stared at Sophie, at this tiny person he barely knew, being held by a complete stranger. "I'm Natalie," she said softly. "I'm so sorry for your loss." He nodded but couldn't speak. His hands trembled at his sides. He wanted to touch Sophie but seemed terrified of doing it wrong. "Would you like to hold her?" Natalie offered. "I don't know how. I've never held a baby." Before. Rebecca and we hadn't planned for this. She wasn't due for another 2 months. His voice cracked completely. "She's gone. My wife is gone. And I don't know what to do." Dr. Morgan stepped forward. "Mr. Hartley, your daughter is stable now thanks to Miss Ross, but Sophie is going to need continued care. She's very premature and will require specialized feeding for at least several weeks." Julian finally looked at Natalie directly. "You saved her. The doctor told me she was dying, and you saved her." "Anyone would have done the same," Natalie replied, though her voice shook. "No." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Not anyone. You came in the middle of the night. You're holding my daughter like she's precious. You're giving her what I can't." He paused, struggling with his next words. "I need to ask you something, and I know it's insane, but I'm desperate." Natalie waited, her heart pounding. "Will you help me keep her alive? Not just tonight, but until she's strong enough. I'll pay you whatever you need. I'll give you anything. Just please don't walk away from her yet." The request hung in the air between them. Natalie looked down at Sophie, so small and vulnerable, then thought of Owen sleeping in the next room, of her bakery, of her bills, and her carefully constructed life. But when Sophie's tiny hand gripped her finger with unexpected strength, Natalie knew her answer before she even spoke it. "Yes, I'll help you." The penthouse overlooked the entire city from the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a painting, and marble floors gleamed under designer lighting. Natalie stood in the entrance with Owen in her arms and a single duffel bag containing everything they owned, feeling completely out of place. "This is your suite," Julian said, opening double doors to reveal a space larger than her entire apartment. There was a bedroom with a king-sized bed, a private bathroom with a soaking tub, and a connected nursery already equipped with 2 cribs, changing tables, and more baby supplies than she had ever seen in one place. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly housekeeper who had worked for Julian's family for 30 years, appeared with fresh towels and a warm smile. "I've prepared the nursery for both little ones. There's a bottle warmer, a sterilizer, and I've stocked the mini fridge with everything you might need." "This is too much," Natalie whispered, overwhelmed. Julian stood in the doorway, keeping a respectful distance. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking exhausted but determined. "It's not enough. You're saving my daughter's life. The least I can do is make sure you're comfortable." That first week felt surreal. Natalie would wake up in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, feed both babies in a nursery that looked like something from a magazine, and try to navigate a world where people had personal chefs and housekeepers. She kept Owen close, afraid that this luxury might somehow swallow them both. Julian was trying. She saw it in the way he watched her with Sophie, taking mental notes on every movement. He would stand in the doorway during feeding times, observing how she supported Sophie's head, how she checked the baby's temperature, how she knew exactly when to burp her. His expensive business suits were often stained with spit-up by noon, and his conference calls were frequently interrupted by crying. One afternoon, Natalie found him in the nursery, holding Sophie awkwardly, while trying to read a book titled Fatherhood for Beginners. Sophie was fussing, her face red with frustration. "May I?" Natalie asked gently. He looked relieved and guilty at the same time. "I've been trying for 20 minutes. I don't know what she wants." Natalie took Sophie and immediately felt the tension in the baby's body. She needs to be changed, and then she's probably hungry. But first you have to relax. Babies can feel when you're stressed. "How do you make it look so easy?" "Practice and desperation," Natalie smiled. "When Owen was born, I cried every night. For a month because I was terrified of doing everything wrong. But you learn. You adapt." Julian watched as she changed Sophie's diaper with efficient, gentle movements, talking softly to the baby the whole time. "Where's Owen's father?" The question came out before he could stop himself. "I'm sorry. That's not my business." "It's okay." Natalie settled Sophie for feeding. "His name was Derek. We met in culinary school. He was charming, full of dreams about opening restaurants together. When I got pregnant, he said all the right things at first. Then reality hit, and he disappeared. I haven't heard from him since Owen was 3 months old." "He's an idiot." Natalie looked up, surprised by the anger in Julian's voice. "Maybe. Or maybe he just wasn't ready. Either way, Owen and I are better off without someone who doesn't want to be there." "You deserve better than that." "So did your wife." The words hung between them. Julian's jaw tightened. "Rebecca and I married because our families expected it. Our fathers were business partners. It was convenient, strategic. We lived separate lives in the same house." He paused, pain flickering across his face. "I didn't love her the way a husband should, and she knew it. This baby was supposed to fix everything, but it just showed us how broken we already were." Natalie had no words for that kind of honesty. She simply nodded, understanding more than he probably realized. The days developed a rhythm. Mornings meant feeding both babies, usually with Julian attempting to help and making endearing mistakes. He would mix formula at the wrong temperature, put diapers on backwards, and once tried to dress Sophie in an outfit meant for a 6-month-old. But he never gave up. He asked questions constantly, writing notes in a leather journal he carried, everywhere. Afternoons were quieter. While the babies napped, Julian would disappear into his home office for business calls, and Natalie would find herself wandering the enormous penthouse. She discovered a library filled with books, a music room with a grand piano and a chef's kitchen that made her heart ache with longing. One day, unable to resist, she baked chocolate chip cookies, filling the sterile apartment with warmth and sweetness. Julian found her there, flour on her nose, pulling a tray from the oven. "It smells like a real home," he said quietly. "I couldn't help myself. Baking calms me." He took a cookie, still warm, and for the first time since they met, she saw him smile. Not a polite smile or a grateful one, but something genuine. "These are incredible. It's what I do, or what I did before all this. I have a small bakery downtown. Sweet beginnings." "Had? You gave it up?" "Just temporarily. My friend Jessica is covering for me, but I'm losing clients every day I'm not there." She tried to keep her voice light, but the worry leaked through. Julian set down the cookie and looked at her seriously. "You shouldn't have to sacrifice your dream to save mine. Let me help. I'll hire staff for your bakery, cover the costs until you can return whatever you need. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't let you buy my life. This arrangement is already complicated enough. He respected that, but she saw the frustration in his eyes. He was a man, used to solving problems with money, and she was a problem that couldn't be solved that way. Evenings became the time Natalie both anticipated and feared. After Mrs. Patterson left and the babies were asleep, she and Julian would find themselves alone in the massive living room. Sometimes they talked, other times they sat in comfortable silence. He would pour wine, and she would curl up on the leather sofa with a book, and somehow it felt more intimate than anything she had experienced with Derek. One night, Julian found her on the balcony, staring at the city lights with tears on her cheeks. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know anymore." She wiped her face quickly. "I keep thinking about Sophie's mother, about how she never got to hold her baby like this, never got to see her starting to gain weight and get stronger. It's not fair." Julian stood beside her, close but not touching. "Rebecca didn't want this baby at first. When she found out she was pregnant, she cried for hours, not happy tears. We fought about it." His voice was raw with confession. "I convinced her to keep the pregnancy, thinking it would save our marriage, and now she's dead because of that choice." "You can't think like that. How else should I think? My wife died giving birth to a child she didn't want, for a marriage that was already over." Natalie turned to face him. "Sophie is alive. That matters. Rebecca gave her life, whether she wanted to or not, and now Sophie has a chance. You're learning to be her father. That's not nothing." Julian's eyes searched hers in the darkness. "You're remarkable. Do you know that? You walk into chaos and somehow make it bearable." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm just a baker from the wrong side of town who got lucky enough to help." "You're so much more than that." He reached out, almost touching her face, then dropped his hand. "I should let you sleep. Thank you for listening." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone with racing thoughts and feelings she had promised herself not to develop. This was temporary, she reminded herself. Julian Hartley lived in a world of wealth and power, and she was just the woman keeping his daughter alive until he didn't need her anymore. But when she checked on Sophie before bed and found Julian already there, sitting in the rocking chair with his daughter against his chest, humming softly, something in her heart cracked open. He looked up and their eyes met, and in that moment, they both knew this had become more than a business arrangement. They were becoming a family, whether either of them was ready to admit it or not. Victoria Hartley arrived on a Tuesday morning, without warning, sweeping into the penthouse like a cold front. She was a woman in her early 60s who wore her wealth like armor, dressed in a pristine cream suit with pearls that probably cost more than Natalie's bakery. Her sharp eyes took in everything at once. Natalie feeding Sophie on the sofa, Owen playing on a blanket nearby, the homey touches that had slowly transformed the sterile space. "Julian, we need to talk. Privately." Her voice cut through the peaceful morning like glass. Julian emerged from his office, his expression hardening the moment he saw his mother. "Mother, you should have called first." "I shouldn't need an appointment. To see my own son." Victoria's gaze slid to Natalie with barely concealed disapproval. "Especially when I hear disturbing rumors about inappropriate living arrangements." Natalie felt her cheeks burn but kept her focus on Sophie, who was feeding contentedly. "Natalie is helping care for Sophie. She's here as a medical necessity," Julian said firmly. "Is she?" Victoria moved closer, examining Sophie with clinical detachment. "This child has been in your home for 3 weeks. Surely you can hire proper staff by now, nannies, nurses, people who know their place." Natalie knows exactly what Sophie needs. She saved her life. And you've compensated her generously, I'm sure. But this situation has gone on long enough. Victoria's voice dropped to a harsh whisper that Natalie could still hear. People are talking, Julian. Your wife has been dead less than a month, and you're living with another woman. It's unseemly. Natalie stood up carefully, settling Sophie in her bassinet. I should give you privacy. No. Julian's command stopped her. You're part of this family now. You should hear whatever my mother has to say. Victoria's lips thinned. Family? Julian, be reasonable. This woman is an employee at best. You're grieving, not thinking clearly. Rebecca's death was tragic, but you have responsibilities. The company, your reputation, this child's future. You can't throw it all away for some misguided attachment. Attachment? Julian's voice rose dangerously. Natalie has done more for Sophie in 3 weeks than anyone in our family would have done. She's here at 3 in the morning when Sophie cries. She's patient when I make mistakes. She treats my daughter like she matters. Your daughter. Victoria's words hung in the air with strange emphasis. That's actually why I came today. There's something you need to know. She pulled an envelope from her designer purse and handed it to Julian. His hands shook slightly as he opened it and began reading. Natalie watched his face drain of color, his jaw clench, his entire body go rigid. What is this? Evidence that Rebecca was planning to leave you. Her sister Lauren found these documents in Rebecca's safe deposit box. She was filing for divorce, Julian, and there are questions about Sophie's paternity. The words fell like bombs. Natalie's stomach twisted as she saw Julian's world crumbling again. Rebecca was having an affair with Thomas Rodriguez, your business partner. Lauren believes Sophie might be his child. Given the circumstances, I think a DNA test is warranted before you continue this charade of fatherhood. Julian sank into a chair, the papers trembling in his hands. Natalie could see the letter now. Rebecca's elegant handwriting detailing her plans to leave, her confession about the affair, her uncertainty about the pregnancy. I can arrange everything discreetly, Victoria continued, her voice almost gentle. Now, if the test shows Sophie isn't yours, we can make arrangements. Adoption, foster care, whatever is appropriate. You'll be free to move forward without this burden. Burden? The word came from Natalie before she could stop herself. Sophie is a baby, not a burden. Victoria turned to her with ice in her eyes. This doesn't concern you, Miss Ross. You've been paid for your services. Perhaps it's time you return to your own life. Don't speak to her like that. Julian stood up, and Natalie had never seen him look so fierce. Natalie has more right to be here than you do. She loves Sophie, actually loves her, not as an heir or a reputation, but as a person. Love? Victoria laughed coldly. You've known this woman for 3 weeks. You're confusing gratitude with affection, convenience with connection, and she's clearly taking advantage of your vulnerable state. Get out. Julian's voice was quiet but absolute. Julian, be reasonable. Do the test. If Sophie is your daughter, fine. If not, you're free. Either way, you need to think about your future. The right kind of future, with someone from your own world. My world? Julian moved to stand beside Natalie, and she felt the warmth of his presence like a shield. My world has been empty and cold for years. Natalie showed me what real compassion looks like, what actual family feels like. So yes, we'll do the DNA test. But not because I need to know if Sophie is mine biologically, because I already know. She's mine in every way that matters. Victoria gathered her purse with sharp, angry movements. You're making a terrible mistake, both of you. This fantasy won't last. After she left, the silence felt crushing. Julian stood motionless, still, holding Rebecca's letter. Natalie wanted to comfort him, but didn't know how. Finally, she spoke softly. Do you want to do the test? I have to know the truth. He looked at her with raw vulnerability. But I'm terrified. What if Sophie isn't mine? What if I lose her too? Biology doesn't make someone a father. Love does. You've been getting up, at night with her, learning how to change diapers, singing off-key lullabies. You're already her father. The DNA test took 3 days. 3 days of Julian being distant and quiet, of Natalie watching him struggle with demons he wouldn't name. She kept Sophie close, kept their routines normal, and tried not to think about what would happen if the results changed everything. When the envelope arrived, Julian asked Natalie to be with him when he opened it. They sat in the nursery with both babies asleep, and he broke the seal with shaking hands. He read the results in silence, his face unreadable. Then he carefully folded the paper and looked at Natalie with tears in his eyes. She's not mine. Biologically, Thomas is her father. Natalie's heart broke for him. I'm so sorry. Don't be. He stood and moved to Sophie's crib, looking down at the sleeping infant who had gained 2 pounds and grown stronger under their care. I choose her. Blood doesn't make someone family. Choice does. I choose to be her father. I choose to love her no matter what some test says. He turned to Natalie, and she saw something new in his expression. Not just determination, but clarity. And I choose you. I'm in love with you, Natalie. Maybe it's fast, maybe it's crazy, but watching you with Sophie, with Owen, seeing your strength and kindness every day, I fell completely in love with you. Natalie couldn't breathe. Julian, you don't have to say anything. I know this is complicated. I know I'm still grieving and you're still healing from your past. But I need you to know that you're not just helping me survive. You're teaching me how to live. Really live. She crossed the room and took his hands. I love you too. I've been fighting it because it seemed impossible, but I love you. I love watching you become the father Sophie needs. I love how you play, with Owen like he's your own. I love the man you are when all the walls come down. He kissed her then, gentle and desperate at the same time, and it felt like coming home. 6 months later, they stood in front of a building with a sign that read, Hartley and Ross, a family kitchen. It was a restaurant and bakery combined. Natalie's recipes and Julian's business sense creating something beautiful together. Sophie, now healthy and thriving, slept in a carrier against Julian's chest. Owen toddled between them, holding both their hands. Ready to open the doors? Julian asked. Ready to start our life, Natalie answered. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with a single diamond. I know we've done everything backwards, lived together before dating, became parents before becoming partners, but will you marry me? Not because of money or convenience, but because I love you and can't imagine my life without you. Natalie looked at this man who had chosen love over blood, who had fought his family for a chance at real happiness, who had become everything she never knew she needed. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They kissed while Owen giggled and Sophie slept, and somewhere in the city, Victoria Hartley received a wedding invitation she would eventually grudgingly accept. Because love doesn't follow rules or timelines. It doesn't care about backgrounds or bank accounts. It simply finds the people brave enough to choose it, again and again, even when the world says it's impossible. And Julian and Natalie chose it. They chose each other, chose their children, chose the messy, beautiful, imperfect family they had built from heartbreak and hope. That was the only truth that mattered. The end.